There are certain places in Lagos that feel like they exist outside of time. Places where the air hums with whispers, and the walls of ordinary buildings hide secrets older than any government. One such place was tucked in a corner of Ajigona, by the old, rusting water tank behind the broken-down mechanic workshop and the crumbling fence of Ojo Grammar School. There stood a small wooden kiosk. Its blue paint had faded under the punishing sun, its zinc roof dented from too many rainy seasons. But the scent that came from inside, the unmistakable aroma of fried plantain, spicy jollof rice, and thick ogbono soup, made students, area boys, and downfall drivers stop dead in their tracks. The name on the banner was simple, Mama Delicious. Nobody remembered when she started selling food there. Some said she'd been there for over 20 years. Others whispered she just appeared one day, like smoke from a shrine. But everyone agreed on one thing: her food was irresistible. And so was her presence. Mama Delicious wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense. Her skin was the deep, dark brown of roasted cocoa pods, stretched taut over a wide, commanding frame. Her eyes were always lined with thick, black kohl, giving her an otherworldly stare. Her head was always wrapped in deep green gelly, tied in a dramatic knot like the crown of an empress. Every day, she wore the same pattern Ankara blouse with a low neckline that revealed an odd tattoo, a pair of twisting fish swimming in a circle over her chest. She always smiled. But her smile never reached her eyes. It was a humid Thursday afternoon, and the final bell at Ojo Grammar School had just rung. A swarm of students in yellow and green uniforms poured into the street. Laughter and shouting filled the air as they rushed to the row of food stalls, none more crowded than Mama Delicious. Her jollof had a flavor that seemed to awaken something primal. Her ogbono soup was so thick it clung to your soul. Students who ate from her place always came back. Not once, not twice, but daily. And then some never stopped coming back. Next, she shouted, banging her large spoon on the iron pot. "Una dey waste my time." A group of senior students rushed forward, 2 girls and a boy. One of the girls, F, was the prettiest SS3 student in the school. Fair-skinned, with bold cheekbones and eyes that always looked like they were holding back secrets. She'd become Mama Delicious' favorite, and many noticed the change in her over the last 2 months. Her skin now glowed unnaturally. Her school shoes, once worn and cracked, were now new. She carried herself like someone who had seen things other students hadn't. That day, Mama Delicious leaned close to F and whispered something. F nodded. The other 2 students didn't hear it. But they saw F turn to them and smile wide. "Let's eat inside," she said. Mama Delicious' stall had a small door at the back that led into a narrow corridor. Nobody knew what lay beyond it. Most customers never entered. But that day, F led her friends through it. The walls were lined with strange masks, charms tied in red thread, and framed portraits of fish-headed goddesses. A thick, damp scent filled the air, like rain-soaked soil mixed with blood. The boy hesitated. "Wait, what is this place?" F didn't answer. Mama Delicious only smiled, her eyes gleaming like wet glass. Then, the door slammed shut. Outside, the street buzzed on. Nobody noticed the absence of the students. Nobody saw the thick shadow snake under the wooden stall, curling like smoke. That night, rain fell. Thunder cracked open the sky. And in the gutter behind the kiosk, 2 school shoes floated, empty. Only 1 student returned to class the next day. F. Her eyes were a deeper shade of red. Her smile, broader. She now walked like someone who no longer feared death. The school didn't investigate the disappearance seriously. The boy's mother cried to the police, but the case was dismissed as a juvenile runaway. The girl's family received a single, chilling text message that read, "I'm leaving. Don't look for me. I'm with my destiny now." Nobody suspected Mama Delicious. Nobody except one teacher. Mr. Jude, a young NYSC corps member, had only been posted to Ojo Grammar 3 months ago. A literature graduate from Unilag, he wore thick glasses and always carried a notebook. He noticed the change in his students, especially F. Her handwriting changed. Her essay on dreams and destiny was chilling. One line stood out. "The sea remembers what the land forgets. And those who feed her rule the world." He asked her about it. She smiled and said, "I had a vision." That night, Mr. Jude stood by Mama Delicious' stall long after closing time, pretending to wait for a kiki. The street had emptied. The kiosk was closed. But he heard humming from inside. And then, water poured out from beneath the wooden floor. Salty. Foamy. As if the ocean was hiding beneath the broken Ajigona ground. He turned and ran. The next week, another student disappeared. A boy named Tolu. 2 days later, F arrived in school wearing a gold bracelet. She said it was a gift from her spirit husband. Mama Delicious' business boomed. Area boys started kneeling before her before buying food. One of them, Wesu, said he saw her walking barefoot at 2 a.m. toward the canal, carrying a bowl of meat in one hand and a rooster in the other. He said the rooster wasn't crowing, it was chanting. He disappeared 3 days later. It wasn't long before people in the neighborhood started whispering. Mama Delicious no be ordinary woman. They say she never eats her own food. I heard she sells to spirits. One night, a brave pastor from a local white garment church attempted to pray outside her stall. By morning, he was found sprawled in the gutter, babbling nonsense about the throne under the sea and the feast of unborn souls. Mama Delicious only laughed when she heard. She grew bolder. One Friday evening, she shut her stall early. At exactly midnight, she lit a small fire at the edge of the road and called for F. 3 other girls came with her, new students, quiet and easily impressed. Mama Delicious gave them bowls of pepper soup, served with tilapia fish shaped unnaturally like tiny mermaids. As they ate, they began to shake. Tears ran down their cheeks. But they kept eating. Mama Delicious clapped her hands and began to sing in a strange tongue. The girls' eyes rolled back. F stood in the center, arms raised to the sky. And in that moment, a wind blew from the canal. A wind that smelled like blood and brine. The bell rang at Government Secondary School Umwama, echoing through the compound like a warning. The day's lessons had ended, and the sun, now sinking behind dusty clouds, painted the sky a burnt orange. Students poured out of classrooms in a mix of chatter and fatigue, their navy blue uniforms clinging to sweat-soaked backs. But not all was well. Outside the school gate, under her rusty red umbrella, Mama Delicious stood, lips coated in crimson lipstick, her wrapper tied tightly across her full hips, her blouse straining under the weight of years. She hummed an old Itsekiri song, stirring a bubbling pot of ogbono soup. As the students approached, the air changed. Flies soared above her steel pots, yet none landed. A strong scent, pepper, blood, and something fishy rose with the steam. Una don't come, Mama Delicious grinned, revealing teeth stained slightly yellow from chewing bitter cola. Today's special First 50 naira, I go admit join. The girl smiled. But their eyes were vacant. It began with Chika. She was always among the first to arrive after school, sharp-tongued, clever, with a laugh that could melt tension. But this week, her classmates noticed something off. Her laugh had vanished. Her jokes, once playful, were now dark. She murmured to herself. Sat alone under trees. Sometimes she stared blankly into puddles, whispering names no one recognized. During morning devotion, while other students clapped and sang, Chika refused to open her mouth. I don't sing to empty heavens, she told her seatmate one day, eyes flickering with something cold. Then it was Ngozi. She stopped braiding her hair. Stopped greeting her classmates. On the third day, Ngozi screamed in the hostel at midnight, claimed the snake was in her mattress. But when the matron rushed in, nothing was there. Only Ngozi, hissing. On the fourth day, her tongue had strange cuts. Her breath smelt like pond water. Teachers whispered it was a face. Hormones. Peer pressure. They even blamed the new boarding policy. But Senior Onum, head girl and S.S.3 prefect, had seen enough. Something was deeply wrong. From her window in the hostel block, she watched as the same group of girls, Chika, Ngozi, and two others, sneaked out every night around 1 a.m. They wore white wrappers, their faces bare. Their eyes glowed faintly. Where were they going? The only way out that late was through the back fence, or through the school gate. And standing by the gate, always, was Mama Delicious. Waiting. They called him mad. He was shirtless, wore a wrapper around his waist, and dragged a Bible held together by masking tape. But his eyes were sharp, clear, like someone who had seen the other side. He arrived that Wednesday. Outside the school gate. Right beside Mama Delicious. "Mama, your food dey sweet oh," he said, licking his lips. Mama Delicious stared at him. "You won't buy?" He shook his head. "No. I dey fast. Holy fast." He knelt suddenly on the dusty ground. "Spirit of Umoma. Marine god of the underwaters. I see you. You have entered through a woman of fire and fish. Madman. Leave here." Mama Delicious roared. The pot shook. The fish bones in the stew turned upward, pointing. "Madman. Obi, you won't die." The prophet stood slowly. "Death already did this place, Mama. But the spirit where you serve go soon collect you too. Because the blood of these girls." He didn't finish. A swarm of flies engulfed him. From nowhere. He screamed. Run. By the next week, the signs became undeniable. For girls now convulsed randomly in class. One girl spoke in tongues, but not of any church. Her voice was deep. Masculine. She told her mathematics teacher, "I know when your father died. You killed him. That poison you mixed." The class screamed. The teacher fainted. Even the most stubborn science teacher, Mr. Dogo, who once claimed Juju no day, stopped coming to school. Senior Onum gathered courage. She followed the girls one night. She saw them enter Mama Delicious' house. She hid behind the fence. What she saw inside made her gasp. There was a bowl filled with hair, blood, and water that glowed green. Mama Delicious stood in the middle. Naked. Her skin was peeling, revealing scales. She fed them fish. Raw. The girls chewed without blinking. Say the chant, she whispered. And they did. Water mother, queen of night, we drink your salt, we bear your fright. Give us beauty, give us light, take our tongues and blind our sight. Their voices rose. Senior Onum's nose bled. She ran. Didn't stop until she reached the chapel. The priest didn't believe her. But that night, a statue of the Virgin Mary cried tears of oil. Mama Delicious sat outside her house the next day, humming. Business was booming. Girls flocked to her stand. But her eyes were different now. No longer pretending. Fully possessed. Inside her soup pot, a finger bone floated briefly, then sank. Rain slapped against the rusted zinc roofs of St. Luke's Girls' Secondary School like wild knocks from spirits trying to be let in. Thunder cracked above the mango trees by the assembly hall, but the students in the senior block were too focused on the steamy aroma drifting across the quad to care. They called it heaven on earth. Mama Delicious had started her after-class chop-free fare for SS2 and SS3 girls. Every day after school, she would set up a canopy behind the school's rear fence. Girls would slip through the bush path in twos and threes, brushing off bars and dodging prefects, drawn by the oily fragrance of deep-fried akara, goat meat pepper soup, and the sweetness of puff-puff soaked in condensed milk. They all adored her. But none knew what she had put in the food. Beneath her mobile food table was a black ceramic basin. No one ever noticed it. That bowl wasn't for washing hands. It was for collecting something. Every time the girls laughed after eating her food, every time one of them said, "Auntie Delicious, you too subby cook." A wind passed under the table, and the basin quivered. Unseen. Only she could see what gathered there. Not food. Not water. Spirit light. Fragments of innocence. The marine goddess who had once saved Mama Delicious from death now demanded monthly payment. And not with coins. She wanted pure mouths. Young. Vibrant. Curious. Girls standing at the border between girlhood and womanhood. Veronica Egbinidian was the head girl. A tall, graceful SS3 student known for her piety, braided cornrows, and neat white socks. She was an orphan, raised by her pastor uncle. Always polite. Always prayerful. Mama Delicious targeted her first. "You too fine, I swear," the woman said that Friday, slapping Veronica playfully on the back while handing her free jollof rice laced with periwinkle. "You go make one rich man happy one day." Veronica smiled, shy but grateful. "Thank you, Ma." That evening, she didn't sleep. She heard drums in her dreams, not from any earthly band. Metallic drums under the sea. The next morning, she vomited water. Frothy. Salty. Her eyes turned faintly bluish for a second. Then normal again. Her classmates said she was probably stressed. But she began withdrawing from choir practice. She stopped attending Sunday school. And sometimes, she stared into space, whispering in a language no one could understand. The more girls ate from Mama Delicious' food table, the more oddities started happening. Esther F., the governor's niece, began speaking to a fish in the school pond. Ogonero, the class clown, fell into a trance during chemistry class, eyes rolling back. Two best friends started quarreling fiercely for no reason, each saying the other had turned cold like a snake. One girl, Joy, woke up screaming at 3:33 a.m., claiming she saw Mama Delicious combing her hair at the foot of her bed with wet seaweed. The school authorities noticed something was wrong, but they blamed stress. The WAEC exams were near. They didn't see the small scales forming under the girls' armpits, or the way their laughter had become echoey. Strange. One night, in her one-room rented apartment behind the old Catholic church, Mama Delicious removed her galley, locked her door with a curry-covered padlock, and pulled up a floorboard. Beneath it was a jar of dark green jelly, not Vaseline. It pulsed like a beating heart. She rubbed it on her tongue, then muttered in its Ikiri. "I bring them, oh, as I promised. Make una give me more power, make my food sweet die." A voice answered, female, ancient, and submerged. "We want 3 more. And the bell shall ring." Her eyes turned yellow. Not contact lens yellow, but the kind of yellow that glowed even in darkness. She smiled. The girls would come. They always came. Because her food now had something extra. Not Maggie. Not crayfish. But essence from the river mouth. The final straw came when Veronica fainted during assembly. As the students recited the national anthem, she clutched her throat, began croaking like a frog, and collapsed to the floor, her feet soaking wet despite it being a sunny morning. Principal Ofolai rushed forward. The other teachers shouted for help. They rushed her to the school clinic. Mama Delicious was already waiting there. No one asked why. She said, "No low blood pressure. Make I give her tea." But the school nurse refused. Veronica's lips were now scaly. Her eyes blinked sideways like a reptile's. The nurse called a reverend. And that's when Veronica screamed, a voice not hers, deep and filled with the echo of waves. "I am the bride of the waters. Leave USB." Everyone in the clinic screamed and scattered. But Mama Delicious stayed. And for the first time, she felt fear. She hadn't just fed them. She had opened a gate she could no longer close. That evening, the girls refused to eat her food. Rumors were flying. Some said she was a witch. Others swore they saw her turn into a cat and sleep under the dining hall. But the true crack came from the unlikeliest source, a girl named Imam. She had only eaten Mama Delicious food twice. On the second night, she had a dream. In it, she was standing at the edge of a beach. A giant fish, silver, with eyes like her mother's, floated to the surface. It spoke. "Mama Delicious is feeding you the hunger of the deep. Run before your mouth forgets how to pray." The next day, Imam reported everything to her mother, who told her pastor, who told the PTA chairman. A meeting was held. Parents, teachers, students, even the Oba's emissary came. When Mama Delicious arrived, everyone turned to look. She wore her usual wrapper, patterned with fish scales and coral beads, but today, it shimmered more than usual. She smiled. A cold, fish-like smile. "You say no me do wetting?" she asked, laughing lightly. But her voice cracked. It sounded like a whale underwater. The hall went silent. Principal Ofolai stood up, hands shaking. "We've called a deliverance pastor. If you have nothing to hide, you won't mind." Mama Delicious didn't reply. Instead, her eyes darkened. And her tongue, it flickered like a snake's. Then, without warning, she fell to her knees. Weeping. "I didn't mean to harm them, oh," she cried. "Nor the spirit way save me that year," she come back. "Say make I give 'em wet mouths." Say if I no do I go die. She pounded her chest. Her wrapper loosened. I swear, I be woman wey just dey find food chop. But the river woman no dey here beg. She say make I collect their laughter. Their future. Silence. Then screams. One of the students, Esther, began speaking in tongues. Another, Veronica, who had been silent for days, suddenly stood and said calmly, "She's not lying. But the spirits are angry. They want balance. Or more shall be taken." The heat was unforgiving that Friday afternoon. The black tar of Ojulegba Street steamed like the gates of hell had cracked open, and from her usual spot just by the pedestrian bridge, Mama Delicious stirred her steaming pot of pepper soup with the calm precision of a ritual priestess. The smoke rose thick and spicy, fish heads, liver, intestines, and something else, something no one could name. Her spot was packed, as always. I beg Mama Delicious, 2 wraps of fufu with that correct catfish pepper soup. Me too, oh. Add roundabout for me. Give me special plate, the one way they make man forget his problems. Students in uniforms, tricycle drivers, and even corporate workers from Yoba College of Technology queued up like faithfuls before a prophet. No one could resist the taste. It was more than food. It was addiction. And no one questioned why every time someone ate that special plate, they changed. Their grades improved. Their skin glowed. Some of the girls began driving second-hand Benzes, gifted by uncles they met mysteriously. Some of the boys dropped out of school, made it in 1 month, and vanished into Lekki Phase 1. But with every gift came something else. Nightmares. Unexplained bleeding. Mysterious deaths. Yet the line never got shorter. At exactly 4 p.m., a new group arrived. Girls from St. Agnes Senior High School, still in their maroon uniforms, giggling as they approached Mama Delicious' stand. Among them was Chisholm, 17, intelligent, outspoken, and street-smart, the pride of her single mother, a petty trader. She wasn't supposed to be there. But temptation wears many faces, and hers came in the form of her best friend, Amoka, who had recently started wearing expensive Brazilian wigs and flaunting a new iPhone. Chisholm had questions. "Babe, where you dey see all this money?" Amoka just smiled. "No Mama Delicious dey plug us. Eat her red plate and your life go change." Red plate. Chisholm frowned. Amoka leaned closer. "E no be normal food oh. You eat you go dream small. Then boom. One spirit go visit you. If you no fear, you go collect your reward. Simple." Chisholm hesitated. But hunger and poverty are persuasive gods. "Give me the red plate," she whispered to Mama Delicious. That night, Chisholm awoke in a room that didn't exist. The walls were dripping water, lined with glowing seashells, and at the center sat a woman with the face of a fish and the body of a queen, humming an ancient Igbo lullaby. Her eyes were made of glass. "You have eaten from the covenant," the woman said. "You now belong." Chisholm tried to scream. Her voice was gone. "You will not speak of this. You will serve in silence. And in return, you shall lack nothing." When she woke, she was on her bed. Her skin was wet, her tongue tasted of salt, and her phone, the same broken Techno from yesterday, had been replaced with a brand new iPhone 14 Pro. Mama Delicious had smiled at her the next day. "Welcome, my daughter." From that day on, Chisholm changed. Her laughter sounded different. Her walk was slower, more graceful, like someone underwater. She now spoke in parables and stank of salt water when the sun hit her back. But her wealth grew. She bought her mother a shop. She stopped taking buses. Her new uncle paid her school fees in advance for 3 years. All Mama Delicious asked was for her to bring one girl every month. Someone ready, she said. A girl who no get papa, who no go be missed too much. Marine spirits no dey like noise. Chisima bade. Until one day, the spirits rejected the girl she brought. They said her heart was too pure, too holy. And that night, Mama Delicious was summoned. The ocean roared in her dreams. And Mama Delicious found herself standing before the throne of Mommy Water, carved in the skulls of drowned men, guarded by maidens with shark teeth. My queen, she said, bowing. Forgive me. You have grown arrogant, Delicious, said the queen. You feed us scraps. We want blood of innocence, not girls who have seen evil. Mama Delicious shivered. Please. You will bring us a virgin. A prophet's daughter. Someone whose tears taste like purity. Mama Delicious knew who they meant. Blessing. 17 years old. Daughter of Pastor Amos. The same pastor who always warned his members never to eat from Mama Delicious' pot. The next day, she added a free lunch for SS3 girls to her signboard. Blessing was innocent, beautiful, and focused. She wasn't supposed to be there. But Amoka had invited her with cunning sweetness, and the hunger of fasting had left her weak. 1 spoon. That's all it took. Mama Delicious served her the gold plate. 2 nights later, Blessing collapsed in church during worship. Her tongue grew long like a serpent's. She screamed in languages no one understood. Her mother wept. It was chaos. Pastor Amos went into dry fasting immediately. And by day 3, he received a revelation. The woman who feeds the city shall vomit the sea, said the angel. She has sacrificed many. She wears their souls in her waist beads. Her pot is a portal. Break it, and the covenant shall bleed. Pastor Amos took 6 prayer warriors and marched to Mama Delicious' stand on a Thursday morning. She was serving rice and stew to a crowd of 30 when he arrived. Mama Delicious, he roared, your time is up. She hissed. The crowd laughed. But Pastor Amos raised a bottle of anointing oil, and the moment a drop touched the ground, Mama Delicious screamed like a wild beast. Her wrapper tore itself apart. Her hair stood on end. Her voice changed to that of 1,000 crying women. The pot exploded. Blood spilled onto the street. The crowd scattered. And in that chaos, 2 snakes crawled out from under Mama Delicious' table, hissing, eyes red, smelling of the sea. She fell to the floor. Foaming. Convulsing. And then, she confessed. I killed them, she screamed. I fed them to the water. I was poor. I had nothing. They promised me wealth. The girls were the price. The police came. The church intervened. Mama Delicious was arrested, but not before the spirits made their final move. That night in the holding cell, her body was found floating 6 feet above the bed, with her eyes open and her stomach bloated, full of seawater. The sun had not set, but a thick, unnatural fog rolled over the town of Ijaja as if summoned by something unholy. Evening had barely begun, yet the air was already heavy with dread. Dogs refused to bark. Pregnant women clutched their bellies and crossed themselves. A baby wailed non-stop from a compound 2 streets away, and no one dared to ask why. Mama Delicious had returned to her usual spot at the street corner, sitting beside her worn-out food trolley, which by now had transformed into something far more sinister than anyone could see. By day, she served umla, yudu, and fried meat. But by night, her hands fed the spirit world. But tonight, the marine realm had come to collect. She came barefoot, hair disheveled, uniform torn. The first girl Mama Delicious had ever initiated, Sola, walked into the market, dragging one foot like it was made of iron. Her eyes glowed blue. Not the soft blue of ocean water. No. These were deep, cast, marine eyes, the kind only seen in underwater kingdoms. Those eyes had once wept when Mama Delicious plunged the razor blade into her tongue during initiation, but not anymore. Now, they held vengeance. As she approached Mama Delicious, market vendors gasped. Some ran. Others stood frozen. Sola stood face to face with her former mother and said nothing. She didn't have to. From her mouth slithered a snake, long, black, with glowing green eyes. It hissed at Mama Delicious and disappeared into her food pot. Mama Delicious collapsed instantly. Mama Delicious awoke not in a hospital, not in her room, but at the riverbank. Again. This time, she wasn't alone. 6 other girls she had initiated over the past year now formed a circle around her. Each of them wore torn school uniforms. Each of them had snakes riding around their necks like jewelry. And in the middle of them stood the queen. Not a human. Not entirely. This was Ephonroy, queen of the river depths, tall, pale as chalk, breasts bare, hair like flowing seaweed, eyes bottomless. She spoke without moving her lips. You fed us flesh, and we gave you wealth. You gave us their tongues, and we made you famous. But you have broken the covenant. You weep too much. You are no longer worthy. Mama Delicious wept at her feet. Forgive me, mother. Please. I will bring more girls. Fresh ones. Younger even. Just give me 1 more month. But Ephonroy turned to the initiated girls. What shall we do to she who breaks the oath? They chanted in eerie unison. Strip her. Bleed her. Offer her to the crabs. And so they did. The next morning, Mama Delicious was found naked in front of the community shrine, bleeding from every part of her body. The villagers gathered. Police arrived. So did the press. But Mama Delicious wasn't mad. Not anymore. She was calm. Still. Staring at the heavens with red eyes. And when the priest of the shrine touched her forehead with chalk, she began to speak in a voice not hers. I am the food vendor of blood. I took your daughters. I dipped their tongues in oil. I made pacts with spirits of the deep. I fed the marine goddess with menstrual blood and pepper soup. I laughed while you called me Mama. And now, my time has come. Some fainted. Some screamed. Some fell on their knees, praying in tongues. Mama Delicious laughed hysterically as her body levitated off the ground, spun 3 times, and crashed back into the sand. She was never seen again. That night, the corner where Mama Delicious sold food for 10 years caught fire, no source, no explanation. Only her pot survived. Still boiling. With no fire under it. When the town tried to dispose of it, the pot vanished the next morning and was found again, inside the Anglican church altar, surrounded by thousands of flies. The church was shut down. Nobody touched the pot again. Months passed. Sola and the other girls were never seen again. Their parents moved out of town. A new vendor tried to sell food at the same corner. She ran mad after 1 week and began to eat her own hair. The school nearby shut down. Posters of missing students increased across the community walls. A mysterious graffiti appeared every full moon on the old food trolley. The first week of August brought with it an unusual silence in the town of Umeus. The rains had become irregular. The air was thick. It was the kind of stillness that made the hairs on the back of your neck rise without explanation. In the darkness of her bedroom, Mama Delicious sat upright in bed. Sweat drenched her wrapper. Her breathing was erratic. Again, the dream. Again, the whispers. Again, the face. Edeora, she whispered. The last girl she initiated. Edeora had vanished just 3 months ago. Everyone assumed she'd eloped with a boy from the city. But Mama Delicious knew better. The last time she saw her was at the riverbank, during the ritual. Mama Delicious hadn't slept properly since. The Queen Mother, her marine spirit mistress, had demanded Adora's life in exchange for long life and protection. But the girl fought it. She spat the blood out. Broke the sacred god. Cursed Mama Delicious in a voice that was not hers. Your belly shall rot with the souls of the children you fed to the sea, Edora had screamed before vanishing into the dark waters. Now, she was back. The school compound began to shift. It started with whispers, strange voices in the girls' hostel that no one could trace. Buckets moved on their own. Hair extensions caught fire. One night, a group of girls ran out screaming, claiming they saw a figure sitting atop the water tank, humming in tongues. Principal Mrs. Okonkwo dismissed it as hysteria. Nonsense. All of you, stop watching horror films. But 2 days later, the school's chaplain, Reverend Ifechukwu, walked into the dining hall for evening prayers and collapsed. Eyes wide. Mouth agape. When he woke up in the hospital, he muttered one sentence. She's coming for the cook. Mama Delicious. That very night, she found her kitchen roof covered in feathers and dried fish heads arranged in a circle. Her cauldron, used for decades, was filled with blood instead of pepper soup. And no one else could see it. Queen Mother is angry, she muttered, falling to her knees. But it wasn't Queen Mother. It was Edora. The following Friday, a bright student named Ezin, a girl who had refused Mama Delicious' invitation to come help her cut onions that night, was found dead behind the chemistry lab. Her eyes were gone. Her fingernails clawed deep into her own chest. Yet, her face smiled. The police were called. But no one could explain it. She must have inhaled chemicals from the lab, the coroner lied. Mama Delicious stood at the edge of the yellow tape, eyes locked on the girl's corpse. A deep chill ran down her spine. Not because of the death, but because Ezin had whispered something to her as she passed by the previous night. You're next. On the 7th day of the lunar calendar, Mama Delicious returned to the river shrine where she made her sacrifices. The path was overgrown, something that had never happened. The candles refused to light. The Queen Mother did not appear. Only silence. Until the water parted. Not violently. Not with splashes. Just a clean, eerie opening like a curtain being drawn. And from it walked Edora. Her white school uniform was soaked in black liquid. Her skin was cracked like dry clay. Her eyes glowed green. She floated instead of walked. Mama Delicious dropped to the ground, trembling. Edeora, I am sorry. I did what the queen asked. You fought her. You broke the covenant. But Adeora's voice was now many voices. Male and female. Young and old. You fed us to her. You fed us for fame. You fed us for power. Now we are full. And we must vomit. Mama Delicious screamed as her legs went numb. Her waist twisted. She tried to stand, but her spine cracked in protest. You shall confess, or we shall confess for you. Then Edeora vanished. And Mama Delicious, with blood pouring from her nose, fainted by the riverside. When Mama Delicious returned home, her hands began to rot. Literally. Her skin peeled each time she touched food. Her cauldrons burst into flames when she boiled water. Each time she passed a mirror, her face distorted, one moment a teenage girl, the next an old woman with gills. The Queen Mother no longer responded to her chants. She had been abandoned. The spirits of the sacrifice girls were now her judges. She began sleep-talking. Loudly. And in her sleep, she said it all. My first offering was Neka, she was just 13. I bathed her in the river and slit her wrist. I said it was initiation into womanhood. But it was a soul trade. Then Amora. Then Nkechi. I made pepper soup from their organs, and served the girls every Wednesday. They licked their fingers and begged for more. I told the school I was giving them extra protein. They didn't know they were eating their own. Neighbors recorded her midnight ramblings. By morning, the entire community was in an uproar. Mothers stormed the school compound with machetes and palm fronds tied around their waists, symbols of war in Igbo tradition. They dragged their daughters from classrooms. Burned the kitchen. Beat drums of mourning in front of the school gate. Principal Mrs. Okonkwo wept in confusion. What is this? What's happening? But then the video surfaced. Mama Delicious confessing. Screaming. Naming names. Describing rituals. The local radio stations played it on repeat. She was arrested by the village vigilantes, bound in chains made from coconut husks and padlocks from 3 different shrines. Still, she laughed. You can tie me. But who will tie the river? In the center of Umu's town square, a trial was held. Not the legal kind, but the spiritual kind, led by Dibia Ogwefai, the oldest and most feared traditional priest in all of Anambra. They bathed Mama Delicious in salt water. Placed 3 burning torches around her. Made her confess again in front of the spirits. She told it all. Every name. Every girl. Every night she walked into the hostel with powdered yam mixed with crushed bones. How she chanted with her eyes rolled back. How Queen Mother kissed her forehead and multiplied her sails. How, after each sacrifice, her pot produced endless meat. Even when I added no goat, the pot gave me flesh. The crowd wailed. Some fainted. Some ran. Dibia Ogwefai shook his head in disgust. She is no longer woman. She is vessel. Just as the Dibia lifted his staff to banish her to the river of dead names, Mama Delicious began vomiting. Not bile. Not blood. But dollar notes. Slimy, blood-stained $100 bills fell out of her mouth in heaps. And with each note came a snake. Slithering. Hissing. Coiling around her neck. She screamed. But her mouth only produced more money. Then came the final horror. From her belly, the hand burst forth. Not human. Not animal. Something ancient. It reached up, grabbed her face, and pulled her down into the earth. Right there, in front of the entire village, Mama Delicious was swallowed by the ground, leaving behind only a single item. Her red food vendor apron. Still steaming. Still soaked in pepper soup. The sun of her agony was late to rise that morning. It sat like a dying ember behind a blanket of thick, grey clouds that refused to move. The market square, usually bubbling with the sound of traders, buyers, and gossiping women, was unusually quiet. The air itself carried a weight, heavy and metallic, like a war was about to break out between the living and the unseen. Inside Mama Delicious' shop, the once glorious aroma of her pepper soup now seemed tainted. Something rotten danced beneath the surface of the spices. She stirred slowly, her face pale, her lips dry, her eyes darting toward the corner of the room where no one stood, but she saw them. The girls. They stood soaked in blood, faces swollen from drowning, mouths wide open as if gasping for air and for justice. She dropped her spoon. The clang echoed across the room like a gunshot. Her apprentice, Cynthia, a wide-eyed 17-year-old who had only recently joined, jumped. "Mama, you dey okay?" Mama Delicious couldn't speak. Her tongue had grown heavy in her mouth. Something slithered beneath her wrapper, cold, wet, moving. She pressed her hand against her stomach. The marine mark had started to burn again. Outside, her shop door suddenly banged open on its own. A gust of wind rushed in. It reeked of salt water. But agony was miles from the ocean. Cynthia screamed. "Blood de your pepper soup pot, Mama." She pointed at the cauldron. Mama Delicious turned. Steam was rising from the pot, as usual, but mixed within it was a deep, dark red, thick and slow, not oil. Not stew. Blood. Then came the whispers. Voices in Egan, the forgotten tongue of the water spirits. They chanted her name. Mocking her. Reclaiming her. 23 years ago. Mama Delicious had been just another woman trying to make ends meet. Her husband had abandoned her with 3 mouths to feed, and her landlord had given her a deadline: pay your rent or leave. That was when she met Ayagbon, the river mother. She didn't appear with thunder or lightning. No. She came as a woman, tall and regal, with skin like polished ebony and eyes that swirled like whirlpools. She found Mama Delicious sitting by the Agony River, weeping. She whispered promises of wealth, customers, fame. All Mama had to do was cook for her. Cook and feed her. "I will provide the ingredients," the river mother said. What she didn't say was that the ingredients would be human. Every year, Mama Delicious had to offer 3 young virgins to the goddess. Their bodies were not buried. They were diced, spiced, and served. Inside the pepper soup shop, Cynthia was already running out into the market, screaming, "Something dey wrong. Something dey wrong for Mama Delicious shop." Vendors stand. Some laughed at first. Until they too smelled the stench. Until they heard the wailing, coming from the pepper soup pot. Then the pot exploded. Hot broth, bones, and charred fingers shot across the shop. Mama Delicious fell backward. When she opened her eyes, her shop was no longer there. She was in the middle of the river. Floating. Surrounded by the daughters of the deep, spirits with white hair, dead eyes, and fish tails. You have broken your covenant, they whispered. Now the debt will be collected in full. As Mama Delicia's unconscious body was dragged out of her shop by strangers, her face twitching, eyes rolling, Cynthia ran to the town's only church. She burst in during mid-service. "Pastor! Pastor! It's Mama Delicious." She dey talk to herself. Her shop done burn. Blood dey inside soup. Something dey wrong. Pastor Ebuka, a calm man in his 50s, stood up slowly. He'd always suspected. He'd always felt something sinister about Mama Delicia's sudden rise. He walked to his congregation, placed his Bible on the pulpit, and said, "Church, today, we go fight a principality." They gathered that night at the burnt remains of the shop. Mama Delicious had woken up, tied to a chair, frothing at the mouth. Her eyes rolled back. She hissed and laughed like a possessed python. Pastor Ebuka stood before her with oil and scripture. A crowd of market women, school teachers, and even the town's chief stood behind him. Ayagbon, Momo's voice twisted into something inhuman. "She is mine. Her soul belongs to the deep." Suddenly, snakes slithered from the ruins of the shop. Long, thick, albino pythons, crawling out of nowhere. The crowd screamed and scattered. But Pastor Ebuka stood still. "In the name of Jesus, I command you, let her go." Mama Delicious began to shake violently. From her mouth, she vomited, not just blood, but human teeth. Dozens of them. Teeth from the girls. Evidence. Proof. The crowd gasped. A schoolteacher fainted. Cynthia covered her mouth. It was true. Everything was true. 3 days later, Mama Delicious sat in the church hall, now calm but lifeless. Her skin was pale. Her eyes hollow. She began to speak. "I killed them. I fed them to you. Every sweet bowl of pepper soup you licked was blood. Every year, 3 girls. It started with Gift, then Busy, then Ngozi. I watched them drown. I cut their limbs. I chopped them like meat. I heard them scream but I could not stop. Ayagbon made me rich. But she took my soul." Cynthia was in tears. The chief shook his head. The pastor wept. The entire market went silent for 2 days. No one cooked. No one ate. Mama Delicious Buka was no longer just a food joint, it had become a feeding shrine. By the end of each school term, at least 2 new senior girls would become silent shadows of themselves, called by Mama Delicious to help after school, only to return home weeks later with strange dreams, water phobia, and unprovoked seizures. She called them her chosen ones. But the marine queen she served, Erakusu, the lady beneath the current, wasn't satisfied with just girls anymore. One night, Mama Delicious sat in the center of her kitchen floor, panting. The mortar she'd used to pound yam all evening began to drip with black liquid. Not oil. Not blood. Something older, something ancient. It smelled like wet decay, like something from the bottom of a lagoon that had died and come back with secrets. The floor rippled. A voice called from within the concrete. "Your time draws near, Maria. One of your own will pierce your veil." Her body went cold. Maria was her real name, no one had called her that in over 2 decades. Only the marine realm knew that name. She swallowed hard and whispered, "What more do you want from me? I've given girls. I've fed your spirits." The voice chuckled, 1,000 wet voices in one. You fed us seeds. Now feed us the harvest. Your bloodline, your kin. The girl who carries your eyes. Mama Delicious gasped. Her hand reached for the photo she kept hidden in her bra, her only daughter, Blessing. A university student in Delta State. The only reason she was doing any of this. No, not Blessing. Take anyone else. I'll give you 3 more from the school. Bright ones. Innocent ones. Please. But the floor had gone silent. The kitchen returned to normal, the black ooze evaporated. The spirit realm had given its final instruction. And it had left her trembling. At St. Agnes Senior High School. Strange things began happening again. First, it was Obianuju, another prefect. She collapsed during a morning assembly. When she woke, she screamed at the principal, shouting, Her food! Her food is alive! It's watching us! The stew, it blinked at me. 2 days later, she went completely mute. Her mother took her to 5 different hospitals. All tests returned normal. Then it was Favor, one of the most brilliant girls in SS3. She started sleepwalking to the school gate every midnight, barefoot, whispering, The water is calling me. Mama is waiting. The school authorities began to panic. A full PTA meeting was called. Even parents who lived abroad dialed in on WhatsApp. Rumors flew like wildfire. Some said the school had been built on an old slave graveyard. Others blamed cult initiation among the students. But one elderly man stood up during the meeting, his voice raspy but sure. This is not ordinary. This is marine witchcraft. And it has a feeder among us. The principal, Mr. Ayadil, dismissed the claims. We don't traffic in superstitions here. Let's focus on counseling and therapy for the girls. But secretly, some teachers began to fast. And pray. And watch. Mama Delicious knew what she had to do. If she didn't offer her daughter blessing by the next moon cycle, the covenant would break and the marine spirits would claim her instead. Her health had already begun to fail. She had developed a hunch overnight. Her eyes were permanently bloodshot. Her mouth constantly tasted of salt. That night, she boarded a night bus to Delta State. Blessing welcomed her with love, unaware of the darkness trailing behind her mother's okra wrapper. Mama Delicious cooked egusi soup that evening with her own hands. She laced it with water from her sacred god. But as Blessing took the first swallow, she coughed violently. She dropped the spoon and began to convulse, tears rolling down her cheeks. Mommy! My chest! I can't breathe. Mama Delicious froze. She reached for her daughter, but her arms turned scaly. Her fingernails grew into claws. Blessing screamed. The neighbors rushed in and saw something that made all of them scream in horror. Mama Delicious had transformed. Not into a snake. Not into a human. But something between. A creature of wet scales, burning skin, and glowing eyes. She slithered toward her daughter, but the girl crawled to safety. The neighbors burst in with holy water. Bible verses echoed across the compound. The creature screamed, melting slowly like butter on hot coal. Back in Lagos, weeks later. News spread like wildfire. Mysterious woman turns to monster in Delta State after poisoning her own daughter. But Mama Delicious didn't die. She returned to Lagos, burnt, bleeding, broken, and hid in her buka. Her business collapsed. No one dared eat her food. Students crossed the road to avoid her. Snakes were spotted around the school compound at random times. The local vigilante group surrounded her house one night with guns and machetes. But she wasn't home. She had vanished. For weeks, Lagos was quiet. Then, one night, she reappeared on a popular live-stream deliverance service by Prophet Elijah Firebrand. The camera shook as ushers screamed. There she was, Mama Delicious. On her knees. In rags. Her skin covered in scales. She held a microphone, and her voice cracked like thunder. I was a feeder for the Marine Queen of the South. I served her for 28 years. I gave her children, virgins, girls with destinies. She made me rich, powerful, respected. But she wanted my daughter. That's when I ran. That's when I knew I had become a demon in the eyes of God. The prophet poured oil on her head. She screamed. Coiled like a snake. Foamed at the mouth. And finally collapsed. A quiet wind rustled through the makeshift crusade grounds as Prophet Elijah Firebrand stood before the convulsing body of Maria, now publicly known as Mama Delicious. The massive tent trembled slightly. The speakers cracked. The crowd murmured, some in awe, others in raw terror. Prophet Elijah stepped forward with anointing oil, his eyes steady. You who fed spirits instead of children. You who made covenants under the river, do you renounce your queen? Mama Delicious, lying flat on the ground, her eyes glassy, her lips cracked, whispered hoarsely. She lives in me. I can feel her, even now, even here. Suddenly, a loud thunderclap split the sky. Rain didn't follow, but the air was thick, electric, like water was near. Without warning, the tent lights flickered. The video camera capturing the live stream blurred, and in that moment, the ground underneath her shimmered. A puddle began to form beneath her body, then, from the puddle, a hand reached up. Long fingers. Webbed. Slimy. Blue-black skin glistening with an unnatural sheen. Gasps rippled across the congregation. The deliverance team backed away, some dropping their crosses, others praying in tongues with trembling lips. The prophet roared. What water has claimed, the fire of God must dry. He raised a burning staff, a carved ebony rod with white fire at its tip, and slammed it to the ground. A scream tore through the air, not from Mama Delicious, but from the puddle. Something shrieked. A voice not from this world. She is mine. She was only 30 when she first met Erokusu, the Marine Queen. She had been childless. Poor. Ridiculed in Ajigona. Her husband had left her. People whispered that her womb was cursed. That's when Mama Uduak, a traveling woman who sold beads and herbs, gave her a strange wooden comb. Comb your hair beside the lagoon at midnight. But no matter what you hear, don't look back. She obeyed. That night, the waters shimmered. A soft song called to her, an old lullaby her late mother once sang. She turned back. That was her first mistake. A glowing woman rose from the water with snakes for earrings and eyes like broken stars. She offered her food, wealth, a child, and a price, feed me young destinies. Maria agreed. Mama Delicious now lay in the center of a burning prayer circle. Her skin flaked. Fish scales peeled from her arms. Her eyes rolled back into her skull. She screamed. But this scream was not of fear. It was release. Take her to the altar. Prophet Elijah commanded. 6 men rushed forward. As they lifted her, Water poured from her mouth like a fountain. It soaked the altar steps. The wooden crucifix above the stage cracked at the base. She is fighting back, the prophet muttered. The Marine Queen does not let go easily. Elsewhere in Lagos, the girls begin to awaken. Simultaneously, all over the city, strange things happened. Obianuju, who had been mute for months, suddenly screamed in her sleep, "It's over. She's leaving." Her mother rushed into her room and found her wide-eyed, speaking fluently for the first time. Favor, the sleepwalker, stood up in the middle of devotion at boarding school and vomited a crab. Adiz, who had lost her mind and was chained at a prayer camp, began to sing hymns from childhood. Each girl once touched by Mama Delicious' hand now began to feel a lifting. A release. But not all were free. One girl, Shinonso, the last to be initiated, was still trapped. And in her sleep, she began to cry blood. Back at the crusade ground, the sky above turned grey-green. A whirlwind formed above the tent. Rain finally fell, but not from above. Water gushed up from the earth. The spirit realm was bleeding through. "Cover the circle," the prophet shouted. "Don't let the river rise." Choristers sang louder. Drummers beat violently. Intercessors fell flat, crying in tongues. But it was Mama Delicious who broke the noise. She rose, levitating slightly, eyes glowing faintly green. She looked at the prophet. "She says I can live if I sacrifice you instead." The prophet didn't flinch. He raised the staff again. "Then tell her this, it is not your time. This soul returns to her maker now." He struck the center of the circle. Boom! A blinding light. A scream. A rush of wind. The powder evaporated. The tent quieted. Mama Delicious collapsed, still breathing, but now human again. Mama Delicious was no longer Mama. She returned to being Maria. She stood before a packed church, her skin burnt, her hands trembling. In full view of the live stream, she spoke. "I made a covenant with the queen beneath the water. I fed her girls, high school girls, because I was promised wealth, protection, and power. My buka became a gate. My food, a trap. But I was warned, she would one day ask for my daughter. When I refused, she turned on me." She sobbed. "I was not the only one. There are others. Women. Teachers. Nurses. Vendors. Hidden agents of the sea. We were told to target virgin girls with bright futures. Girls with light in their eyes. Because light feeds the dark better than darkness. Please forgive me." The crowd was silent. Then the prophet stepped forward. "Maria, you have spoken. Now walk the path of cleansing." She was handed over to a deliverance retreat team, 40 days of prayer and fasting. Her buka was shut down permanently. All proceeds from her business were donated to the rehabilitation of affected girls. 1 year later, a documentary titled "The River Eats First" aired on Channels TV. Survivors shared their stories. Maria was interviewed, her face blurred, her voice altered. She now worked as a janitor in a church, silently serving, daily scrubbing floors with tears and repentance. But in a quiet scene at the end of the documentary, her eyes twitched. She paused at the baptismal pool in the church. The water shimmered slightly. She whispered. "She still calls sometimes." And smiled faintly. If this story gripped your soul and left you breathless, don't keep it to yourself. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss another chilling, powerful African folktale. Your support helps us keep unearthing these hidden spiritual stories, crafted with cinematic intensity and rooted in our rich cultural heritage. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were one of the girls Mama Delicious initiated? Join our growing tribe of subscribers who crave mystery, redemption, and the raw power of African storytelling.